Let's explore more autistic history and the Autism Wars. This is part 81 of a series. Alright, so heavy stuff here. Finishing up on the entry of Ivar Lovaas on Wikipedia. I just shared in an earlier video about the significant backlash from autistic advocates and a statement by Julia Bascom of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. Right? And Nazan's objection is fundamentally an ethical one. So I'm going to skip forward now, since I already shared that section, to aversives. And then we're going to talk about a little bit more of autistic history, going back to the timeline. And I think I'll take a look at one of the other ABA schools that launched fairly early on that we're going to see throughout this entire timeline to current history, or to current day. But first, let's talk about aversives. Lovaas is credited with popularizing the use of aversives in behavior modification, as shown in Life magazine photo spread in 1965. Now, I've seen those photos, and the way my brain works, I can't unsee those photos. So if you have a brain like mine and haven't seen these photos before, be careful. Just know you won't unsee them. So he later admitted that they were only temporarily effective, and punishments became less effective over time. Eventually, Lovaas abandoned these tactics, telling CBS in a 1994 interview, "These people are so used to pain that they can adapt to almost any kind of aversive you give them." Alright, so yep. Okay, so I'm going to go back in the timeline here and mention this company or organization that launched in 1975, and their name was Efficacy Research Institute, and the founders were Vincent Stroley, Dudley Orr, and John Pangburn. In 1986, this organization changes their name to the New England Center for Autism. In 1996, the organization changes their name to the New England Center for Children, or NECC. And in 1999 through 2005, the New England Center for Children, or NECC, was part of the Autism Coalition for Research and Education, the ACRE. So you can see definite supporters of ABA had influence in autistic history and legislation and all those things that are going on, while at the same time autistics were excluded from this conversation. And we'll hear more about these folks going forward, because they do end up becoming a bigger part of everything and lobbying for certain bills like the Combating Autism Act of '05 and so on. But we're not quite there yet. And during this timeline, there are more and more and more parent-founded autism organizations and companies being launched, right? So in 1997, you have the Southwest Autism Research and Resource Center, also known as SARRC, founded by parents of an autistic Denise Resnick, Cindy Schneider, and Ron Melmed in 1997. Again, it just keeps going on. Almost every organization or group that I have heard in a big way, it goes back to this network that started about us, without us, in the 90s and earlier, and or has been derived from one of those when they merged in 2005 and became known as Autism Speaks. And so during this era, we've got more and more and more marketing, more and more and more noise and hoopla and drama going out about autism. They have to get the buy-in and everything. They've got legislation that they want passed. And so here we go. I'm going to share with you an article titled "The Anguish of Autism" that was in the Jewish Exponent on October 23rd in 1997, and this was by Sally Friedman. And we'll see yet again that where the autism community is included, the autistic community is excluded. All right, it says here, I have a little boy, my firstborn, who is autistic. I remember very well the day he was born, holding him in my arms, looking into his eyes and marveling about the continuity of life. And then we took him home and loved him and raised him, but something went wrong. When he was just past 1, he stopped answering to his name. He lost the precious few words he had. In the space of 2 months, it seemed that our most precious gift had vanished before our eyes. With these words, Jonathan Shaystack offered testimony to the Health and Human Services Subcommittee of the U.S. Senate in June. Shaystack, a former Philadelphian, was speaking both as an activist on behalf of autism research. He and his wife, Portia Iverson, are the founders of Cure Autism Now, a national organization. And as a father who had watched his son vanish, the casualty of a condition that has no known cause or cure. Shaystack, a Los Angeles film producer whose credits include the recent Air Force One, is on a very personal crusade. This condition affects over 400,000 people in the United States alone, and estimates are that 1 in every 500 children born will be diagnosed on the autism spectrum, Shaystack said recently. Yet the scientific community has virtually ignored autism for the past 30 years, despite the fact that all developmental disorders, it is the one most likely to yield to biological research. When Dove Shaystack was born in 92, a 9-pound baby with a full head of hair, said Iverson, she and her husband rejoiced. Dove sat up on schedule, walked, played, and made sounds. But when he was about 10 months old, Iverson began to notice troubling changes. There were spells of staring that troubled me, and I remember saying to John one day that Dove seemed to be slipping into a world of his own, Iverson said. By the time Dove was 13 months old, his anxious parents had shared their concerns with a pediatrician. Also baffling, we weren't even sure where to go. It was also baffling, Iverson recalled, but at that point, we took Dove to a child psychiatrist who wouldn't give us a conclusive diagnosis. Meanwhile, Shaystack was frantically reading books about child development, hoping that his son was just experiencing developmental lag. That hope ended with a diagnosis of autism when Dove was 21 months old. Alright, I'm going to continue this article in the next video going forward and wrap this one up here. So thank you very much for joining me and learning a little bit more about autistic history.